In a quiet corner of a small American town, nestled among rows of aging houses, stood a modest home with peeling paint and a porch swing that creaked when the wind blew. Inside, the atmosphere was warm but heavy, thick with love and the weight of unspoken burdens. Laura, a single mother in her early 30s, moved carefully through the narrow hallway, her hands steady but her heart worn. In her arms, she cradled her 8-year-old daughter, Emily, whose legs hung limp and lifeless, her body small for her age but her spirit shining through her bright eyes. Emily had been born with a rare, spinal disorder that left her unable to walk. Doctors had tried what they could, but with each appointment, hope became more of a concept than a reality. Laura had heard the words too many times, "I'm sorry, there's nothing more we can do," and each time, it chipped away at her spirit, though she never showed it to Emily. Medical bills filled drawers, phone calls from creditors were silenced. The dreams Laura once had of a full, joyful life for her daughter were replaced by a quiet resolve to simply keep going one day at a time. This morning was no different. Sunlight filtered through worn-out curtains, casting golden lines on the hardwood floor. Laura, with a tired yet tender strength, gently lifted Emily from their second-hand couch into her wheelchair, adjusting the straps with practiced care. She kissed her daughter's forehead with a forced smile, pretending it was just another normal day, even though nothing about their days ever felt normal. Emily, dressed in a faded pink dress with tiny sunflowers on the hem, wheeled herself to the living room window. Outside, children from the neighborhood raced past with boundless energy, their laughter ringing like music. Emily watched in silence, her face calm but her eyes betraying a longing no child should have to feel. Her fingers lightly touched the glass, as if trying to reach through it. Mum, she said softly, her voice barely rising above a whisper. Do you think I'll ever run like them? The question stopped Laura cold. It wasn't the first time Emily had asked, but today, something in her voice made it hit deeper, like the final note in a song that stayed in your chest long after it ended. Laura knelt beside her daughter, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek, and forced herself to smile again, though her throat was tight. You are already stronger than all of them combined, she said, her voice trembling with a love so fierce it burned. And one day, who knows what's possible. But even as she said it, Laura felt the sting of uncertainty. The truth was, she didn't know. Their reality didn't leave much room for dreams. Emily didn't need empty promises, she needed a miracle, and Laura didn't have one to give. Still, Emily smiled, as she always did, her resilience somehow untouched. I think maybe my legs are just sleeping for a really long time, she said with a grin, trying to make her mother laugh. Laura chuckled through her tears. That was Emily Hope wrapped in innocence. Even when life gave her nothing but struggle, she met it with grace and imagination, and it was in that moment, watching her daughter laugh despite it all, that Laura felt both the weight of helplessness and the flicker of something else. Silent prayer rising into the sunlight streaming through the window. Neither of them knew that just down the street, in a cluttered garage full of tools and lost time, a man with hands of steel and a heart broken by his own tragedy would soon step into their lives. They didn't know that someone who had long given up on hope would soon carry it to their doorstep in the most unexpected form. But for now all that existed was this moment, a mother kneeling beside her daughter, a girl in a wheelchair staring out at a world that felt just out of reach, and the powerful, unspoken bond that somehow kept both of them standing. It was a broken world, yes, but love was still alive in it, and sometimes, that's where miracles begin. The sun was beginning its slow descent when Laura's old sedan coughed its last breath and rolled to a stop just outside a small, weathered mechanic shop on the edge of town. The engine hissed, a thin curl of smoke rising from beneath the hood like a white flag of surrender. Laura sighed, her hands gripping the wheel, frustration threatening to spill over, but then she glanced in the rearview mirror at Emily, seated in the back with her ever-present wheelchair folded beside her. Despite the car trouble, Emily was humming to herself, her small hands tapping a rhythm on her knees. The garage didn't look like much, just a tin-roofed structure with peeling blue paint and a faded sign that read Joe's Auto and Repair. A row of broken-down cars sat to one side, and the scent of oil and metal hung heavy in the air. Laura opened her door just as a man emerged from the garage. He was tall, slightly stooped, with silver streaks in his beard and calloused hands stained with grease. His name, Joe, was stitched in red thread on a patch over his chest pocket. You all right there? He asked, wiping his hands on a rag. his voice calm and steady like someone who'd seen worse days. I think the radiator gave out, Laura replied, trying to keep her tone light despite the weight in her chest. We were just on our way home. Joe nodded, already moving toward the hood. Let me take a look. Might be something simple. Laura watched as he worked, the clinking of tools breaking the quiet hum of the evening. Emily remained in the car, watching him with wide, curious eyes. After a few minutes, Joe straightened up, glancing toward the back seat. That's when he saw the wheelchair. It was old and a little wobbly, with duct tape holding one armrest in place. The brace on Emily's legs looked handmade, carefully wrapped but clearly worn from use. He didn't stare, didn't offer the usual awkward sympathies. Instead, he leaned against the car and asked gently, "Your daughter?" Laura hesitated, bracing herself. "Yeah, Emily, she was born with a spinal disorder," the doctor said. "Well, not much hope for walking." Joe nodded, his expression unreadable but not unkind. "Tough kid, I bet." "The toughest," Laura said, a tired smile tugging at her lips. Just then, Emily rolled down her window and leaned out, eyes sparkling. She pointed at the tool in Joe's hand. "I like your wrench," she said brightly. "It looks like a superhero gadget." Joe chuckled a real, unexpected laugh. "Well, I guess it kind of is," he replied. "It saves lives. Car lives. Anyway." Emily giggled, the sound light and full of life. Laura turned toward her daughter, surprised by the asterisk. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a faint silver glow over the quiet town. Most lights had gone out for the night, but one flickered stubbornly in the back of Joe's auto repair. Through a dusty garage window, the pale, warm light revealed a different kind of workshop, one not just for fixing cars, but for something far more personal, far more ambitious. Inside, the air buzzed with quiet intensity. The usual clang of tools was absent, replaced by the soft hum of a soldering iron and the rhythmic clicking of a 3D printer in the corner. Joe sat hunched over a cluttered workbench, surrounded by organized chaos. Metal scraps, circuit boards, wires, and carefully shaped pieces of lightweight carbon alloy. Springs lay coiled beside sensors, and tiny motors waited to be given purpose. It didn't look like a mechanic's bench, it looked like the lab of someone chasing something that mattered. In front of him, an old blueprint was spread out, faded, creased, and smudged with oil and time. It depicted the design of a mechanical exosuit, child-sized, delicately jointed to mimic the natural movement of human legs. Notes were scrawled in the margins, corrections, calculations, and sketches that told the story of years of trial and error. Beside the blueprint sat a photograph. The frame was cracked, and the picture inside was faded, but still clear enough to make out the smiling face of a young girl in braces. Her hands were on her hips like a superhero, standing tall despite the supports on her legs. Joe glanced at it, then quickly away, as if looking too long would break something inside him. He adjusted his glasses and leaned closer to the bench. His hands steady, despite their age, brought two wires together, the soldering iron hissing as metal fused with metal. He paused for a moment, squinting through the magnifying glass, then gently lowered a small sensor into a cavity at the knee joint. The silence was thick, broken only by the soft worry of machines. A bead of sweat slid down Joe's temple. His lips moved, just barely, forming words not meant for anyone else. Maybe this time, it'll work. His voice cracked at the edges, not just from exhaustion, but from something deeper, years of grief, of unanswered prayers, of projects abandoned and hope deferred. But this time felt different. This time, there was Emily, a girl who smiled through pain and believed his wrench was a superhero tool. A girl who reminded him so much of the daughter he had lost that it hurt and healed all at once. He reached for another part and kept going, his hands now moving faster, with more certainty. The lines on his face deepened in the light, but his eyes gleamed with a quiet fire. He wasn't just building something mechanical, he was building a second chance, a piece of hope shaped from bolts and code and memory. Outside, the town slept, unaware of the miracle being pieced together inside that old garage. But in that sacred space of sparks and blueprints, Joe pressed on, driven not by profit or recognition, but by something purer, something born of loss, reignited by a child's smile, and powered by the unshakable belief that maybe, just maybe, he could fix what the world had given up on. The morning sun bathed the neighborhood in soft gold, casting long, gentle shadows across the cracked sidewalks and freshly cut lawns. Birds chirped in the distance, and a quiet breeze carried the scent of summer through open windows. In Laura's front yard, everything looked as it always had, humble, still, ordinary. But today, something extraordinary was about to happen. Laura stood on the porch, shading her eyes as a familiar truck pulled into the driveway. Joe stepped out, his worn overalls dusted with grease, but his hands held something delicate, almost surreal, a sleek, custom-built exoskeleton, shaped and sized for a child. The frame gleamed faintly in the sunlight, the joints lightweight, the design precise. It didn't look like a machine, it looked like hope sculpted into metal. Joe approached slowly, his face unreadable, though his eyes held a flicker of something deep, part fear, part prayer. He knelt beside Emily, who sat in her wheelchair, on the lawn, her legs tucked beneath a blanket, her bright eyes wide with curiosity. No promises, he said quietly, his voice steady but soft. It's not perfect, but maybe it's enough to try. Laura crouched beside them, her hands trembling as Joe showed her how to strap Emily in. The frame hugged her daughter's legs gently, wrapping around her knees, thighs, and waist, with padded, adjustable supports. The battery pack was small, tucked discreetly at the back, and tiny sensors lined the joints like a second nervous system, ready to respond. Emily looked down at the device, her fingers brushing the sleek metal. With wonder, "It's like Iron Man," she whispered, eyes gleaming. Laura gave a watery smile, her breath shaky. "Ready, baby?" Emily nodded. Joe stepped back, with the sun warming her face and the world holding its breath. Emily pressed her palms against the armrests and shifted her weight forward. The suit whirred softly, almost like a breath, and her right leg moved. A step, wobbly, fragile, real. Then the left leg, and then another. Silence fell. Laura gasped, one hand flying to her mouth as her daughter, her brave, bright girl who had never taken a step on her own, walked, not with assistance, not in a dream, walked. Mum. Emily cried out, her voice cracking with joy. "I'm doing it. I'm really doing it." Tears spilled down Laura's face. She reached out but didn't grab her. She didn't want to stop her. She just watched. Neighbors, drawn by the noise and the strange sight, had begun to gather, cautious, curious. They stood on porches and sidewalks, whispering to one another. Then someone clapped, and another, and in moments, the quiet street erupted in cheers and applause. Strangers, friends, kids Emily had only ever watched from a window, now stood, in awe of her, not because she was broken, but because she was brilliant. Joe stood apart, hands in his pockets, eyes shimmering with emotion. He didn't speak aloud. He watched as Emily beamed, stumbling slightly but catching herself. Every step a miracle stitched together with metal, love, and sheer will. Laura turned to him, her face flushed with gratitude, her voice thick with tears. "You fixed what doctors couldn't." Joe didn't answer right away. He just nodded, the corners of his mouth lifting into a quiet, humbled smile. And in that yard, under a soft summer sky, a little girl walked into her future for the very first time. The park buzzed with life. Laughter echoed through the open space as children darted across the field, chasing kites, tossing balls, and racing one another beneath a sky brushed with soft white clouds. The grass shimmered under the sun, every blade seeming to dance with joy. But no one was more radiant than the little girl at the center of it all. Emily. She ran, not walked, not stumbled, but ran through the grass with her arms outstretched, her hair flying behind her like a banner of freedom. The custom braces on her legs shimmered in the sunlight, catching the eyes of everyone who saw her. But it wasn't the technology they stared at, it was the joy. The unfiltered, boundless joy of a child who had once only watched the world from a window and now raced through it with laughter in her lungs. Nearby, Joe sat on a park bench beneath the shade of an old oak tree, a quiet observer of the miracle. He helped build, his hands rested on his knees, grease finally washed away but still etched in the lines of his fingers. His eyes followed Emily with a softness that spoke of both pride and loss. Her soul healed just a little more with every step she took. Laura sat beside him, her gaze fixed on her daughter, tears welling but not falling. This time they weren't tears of pain or fear or desperation. They were tears of awe. She leaned toward Joe, her voice barely above a whisper, full of reverence. "You fixed what doctors couldn't." Joe didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on Emily, his lips curling into a quiet smile. "Sometimes," he said softly, "it just takes someone who refuses to give up." Asterisk, the words hung in the air, simple but heavy with truth, and in that moment nothing else needed to be said. Asterisk, the camera, if there had been one, would pan slowly upward, away from the laughter and the running feet, past the trees and the rooftops, rising into the open sky, a sky wide and blue and full of possibility, a sky that had once felt distant and unreachable, now stretching above them as a symbol of everything Emily had become, a reminder that hope, even when buried under grief and doubt, can rise again. Asterisk, and sometimes all it needs is one person who believes it still can. Asterisk.